Hi guys, we just want to announce that we're doing a super fun giveaway. Happy Halloween, treat from us to you.
Yes, my favorite time of the year.
Spooky season. So we're going to be giving away our Council Collection X Girls Gone Legal mug free of charge, as well as a copy of How to Be Sort of Happy in Law School.
And we're also going to be giving away this hair kit that's for smooth hair. So if you're like me and you dye your hair a lot, this is really important. Also, we're going to be giving away a free blowout to Mark Anthony's salon. So get excited.
Super
all
excited.
Our girls.
The instructions on how to apply are going to be down below. But
Yes.
Looking forward to it.
Good luck.
Please be advised that we are speaking in our own individual capacities and not representing any companies we may work for. We are not your lawyers, and any information given during this podcast does not constitute as legal advice and is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Enjoy the episode.
Hi guys, I'm Katie.
And I'm Nicole.
And welcome back to Girls Gone Legal. Welcome back.
We're
back,
back.
guys. Look how fun my sleeves are on camera. Sorry.
They are fun. Do you like
Thank
typing with those? Because
Do I
can't.
like what? Oh,
typing. I can't type with
I don't
big
really
sleeves.
notice it.
No?
No, I don't
It's
notice
lightweight.
that.
It's lightweight.
It is lightweight.
So it's not in your way.
It is lightweight. So we're back to having super exciting guests today.
Yes.
I'm actually gonna fangirl a little bit because do you want to tell them who we have on?
Yeah, I could tell him.
Who do we have on?
We have Kathryne Young, a professor at JW Law.
Who also is the writer of the book How to Be Sort of Happy in Law School.
Yes.
This is why I was saying I'm gonna fangirl. Is because I got this book when I got into law school. So I talked to this last week or whatever that I got into law school and decided to go to law school in a very short period of time. So I didn't really know what to expect going into it. So I got this book.
Talked about that recently.
Yeah. I didn't. I didn't really know what to expect, and this book was so amazing to kind of give you like the raw truth of what law school is gonna be like, and just some tips and mentalities on like how to approach it. So I actually cannot recommend this book more. There's parts in it that gave me ideas of episodes that we should talk about in the future. So rereading it again for this episode was just amazing. But Nicole will give us a little bit of a brief overview on Kathryne's amazing bio.
Yeah, and also to go off of that, Katie showed me this book, and now that I've graduated law school, I wish I knew this.
Sorry, that was the frame falling off the wall.
Oh my god.
Spooky.
That scared me. I was
Happy
like, someone's breaking in.
Halloween.
I was like, someone's there.
I showed you this book.
Oh yes. Okay. So she showed me this book, and I wish I had it during law school. And for our listeners here, you really should check it out. We're gonna link it below.
Yeah.
Because I think it'd be great. Now looking through this book, I'm like, wow, I wish I knew all these things.
I really actually can't recommend it more, but also if you're an audiobook girl like me, Audible, like or whatever, Amazon, whatever, like just listen to it. Trust me, it's so worth it. It's literally, I believe, 21 chapters, and it's, let me double check on that right now for you. Not even, it's 19 chapters, and it is literally so worth it. Like, yeah, I cannot recommend this book more. It's 19 chapters, so it's an easy read. Definitely download it, listen to it, read a hard copy, whatever you need. Trust me, especially, I don't care if you've already in law school, like, as a 2L rereading it for this podcast, I've learned and was reminded of so many things that I'm like, wait, that's so great. I wish I knew this, or like, I should have focused on this year. So I can't recommend it more, but I'll give it away to Nicole to give us a rundown of Katie's background.
All right, so a little bit about Kathryne Young. She joined the JW Law faculty in 2022. She's an internationally recognized expert in legal consciousness, the study of how people understand and come to hold beliefs about the law and the implications of these beliefs for law, legal systems, and the lives of everyday people. Professor Young's research lies at the intersection of law and sociology. She investigates how law maps onto the realities of the social world and the consequences for access to justice in both civil and criminal realms. Additionally, she has done empirical research on a broad range of socio-legal topics, including police-citizen interactions, parole hearings, illegal gambling, and legal education. Her first book, How to Be Sort of Happy in Law School, has been featured at dozens of law schools throughout the United States. Her other research focuses on developing a better empirical understanding of legal education, including how to be sort of happy in law school. In 2020, Professor Young launched a longitudinal study that follows more than 50 law students from all over the United States, beginning before they started law school and continuing to the present time, and using multiple surveys and in-depth interviews to develop a comprehensive understanding of their law school experiences. Professor Young's work has been published in Harvard Law Review, Law and Society Review, California Law Review, Stanford Law and Policy Review, Fordham Law Review, the Federal Sentencing Reporter, and numerous other law reviews and social science journals. She has been cited by the Washington State Supreme Court and the United States. Before coming to JW Law, Professor Young was a sociology professor at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where she won the university's Distinguished Teaching Award. She also taught evidence at Western New England Law School, where students voted her Adjunct Professor of the Year in 2022. At JW, Professor Young will teach evidence and professional responsibility, as well as courses related to criminal law and procedure, legal education, access to justice, and the sociology of law. So we have an amazing and really cool guest coming on today. Listeners, get ready.
Yes, this is so good. We asked some hard-hitting questions, and I'm so excited for you guys to hear. So I guess
tune in.
Without further ado, drum roll, Professor Kathryne Young. Okay, so we are so excited. So now we do have our guest. This is Professor Young, or Katie. So now we have two Katies. So this is going to be really fun for Nicole.
Two Katies and Nicole.
Yeah, say Katie the whole time. How are you doing today, Professor?
I'm doing great. How are you two?
Good.
Doing good.
Before the call, me and Katie were talking about evidence because I was just complaining about how I've been struggling with I just struggled with my evidence midterms. So I was, getting all getting it off my chest. It's obviously been built up a little bit.
Evidence is a hard one.
Yeah,
it
it's
is
not
hard.
been the most fun.
I feel your pain. It's such a fun class for me to teach. I love teaching it, but it's also, it's just so complex. And some of the rules you just look at and you're like, this is so dry. How can I make this interesting for my students? It is an ongoing challenge.
I have like my little FRE like book next to me the whole time, like going back and forth. It's
And I
been-
gave you that map.
Yeah, you gave me the. It's been great.
So when I was in law school, I had this big map of this evidence chart, and I gave it to Katie.
It
And I was
helped
like, you
me.
should study off of this because it's easy when you can see everything right in front of you mapped out.
Yeah.
Is
Put
it the really colorful one?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's very
yeah.
colorful.
With the circles?
Yeah.
I have it on my wall.
It's
I love that
great.
thing.
It's been
Margaret
amazing.
Hagan. Beautiful design.
That's awesome. No, I love the resources I can take from all my upper years and now alumni. So I definitely do that. I also want to just, first of all, give a full shout out. So when I got into law school, my mom had actually bought me your book to kind of say like, all right, this is what you need to know, I guess. So I come from not a single lawyer in my family. So it's like, I guess learn this. So I have been a fan for a while now. I do have to say, at first, it was my very first resource to learn anything about law school. So thank you for that.
Wow. Yeah, you're very welcome.
Did you? I know. When we were talking on our podcast, I was like, this book is like touches on so many of the different points that we want to touch on in our podcast. So I'm like, if we can get Katie on, that would be so amazing. So thank you again for doing that.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
I guess on that note, like let's segue right into it. Our first question is like, we're putting the floor on you now. Want to tell us kind of, and our audience who might not know a little bit about your book. So this is How to Be Sort of Happy in Law School. Do you want to give us kind of the rundown on what it is, why you wrote it, and that whole side of it?
Sure. Yeah, I wrote the book in part because during the time I was going to law school, I was also becoming a sociologist. I was in a sociology PhD program at the same time. And I started looking at law school through like sociologists' eyes. So I started to see the social structures of law school in a slightly different way. Since I was in law school for a long time, because I was doing both programs at once, I started to see like patterns of students, and I started to understand more about the structure of law school and how law school was working. And I wanted to write the book that I wish that I could have read in law school. And so I wanted to do that, but I also wanted it to be empirically grounded, right? I'm an empiricist. I wanted to make sure it wasn't just my law school experience, right? I didn't want to write an autobiography or something. So Yeah, I conducted a survey of over 1,000 law students from over 100 different law schools, and I conducted a bunch of interviews as well. And I wanted to look at how students make sense of the law school experience, and also I wanted to kind of understand the ways that students had figured out to overcome some of these like, structural factors and stressors in law school. And so the book was my attempt to do that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's, like I said, it's been a resource for me. I know it's been a resource for many. It's nice to also read a book that, like you said, has so many different perspectives on it because, like, I mean, we're in it, so we're feeling it, but there's, no matter if you came into law school the exact same as the person next to you, you're going to have a completely different experience. And I think that's one great thing that I loved about the book, that it touched on so many different kinds of people and so many different issues that you might face. So it was amazing.
Yeah, and this is why I love working with Katie, because she had sent me this book. And I was like, wow, I wish I had this while I was in law school. And that's why I'm so happy that you're on here so that law students can see this.
Sharing it early.
Yeah, sharing it early while there may be like 1Ls.
Yeah.
And they can read this and it can help them get through law school, because I feel like that would have helped me a lot. So that's another good thing about resources, that everyone shares different resources with each other.
Yeah.
So, but
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. I mean, they've also asked me, the Stanford University Press has asked me to consider doing an updated version of the book, releasing another edition of it. And so if either of you or any readers read it and have, it came out in 2018 and have parts of it that are, outdated or need to be rethought or restructured, I'm all ears, and I love hearing from folks who've read the book.
That actually, it was going to be our last question, but you set it up, so I'm going to throw it in now. I actually was wondering, as a personal question, if looking at your book as a whole, like if you were to rewrite it right now, was there anything that you would change or add considering the current challenges like that today's law students face compared to 2018? Because I know things obviously started to shift, and I'm sure if it was now, there would be a whole probably additional chapter on like how we had to navigate it through the pandemic and sides like that. But if there was changes right now that you had to make, is there anything that sticks out as I wish I added that or changed this?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There are several, but I'm more interested in what students think. I mean, the funny thing is that, like, so I wrote it when I was just finishing being a law student, or I guess I just graduated from law school, I don't know, and not even 5 years earlier or something like that, I think, when I was writing it. I started writing it even earlier. And it was so close to my personal experience, and there's a lot of me and who I am in the book. And I think that actually, as a law professor now, previously I was a sociology professor, as a law professor now, I think I've grown more to be socialized to be more circumspect. So I do look back at the book and go, oh my God, I can't believe I admitted that. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. Or students will know things about me and I think, how did you know that? And I'm like, oh, I wrote it in the book. So
Giving away your secrets.
But as far as what I would change, I mean, I think AI presents challenges for a lot of students. So I think that's something that needs to be covered, although it's hard to cover it in a in a timeless way since it's something that's changing.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. I think that the political landscape of the U.S. has changed so much that some of the polarization that existed to some extent when the book came out, but has gotten, more and more severe. I think I'd talk about that. I think that students feel differently about, or at least many students feel differently about the Supreme Court and the current court's approach to precedent has, at least for some of my own students, kind of shifted, or I don't know, shaken the foundation of how they feel about the law necessarily, but it's made them question what a lawyer can or should do through the courts or outside the courts, or the best ways to achieve social justice if that's your reason for coming to law school. So I think I would probably talk about that in a slightly different way. Certainly the challenges of, I think just we have some post-COVID changes that I feel like are somewhat permanent, and some are good and some are bad in terms of the classroom and learning. There are folks who are exposed to real health risks in the classroom. There are folks who are real hostile to those who still wear masks in the classroom. And so, I think all of these things are on students' minds, but there are probably other things too that I'm not even aware of.
Mm-hmm. 100%. No, it's like you said, and I feel like in 10 years, if you're to rewrite it, there's going to be 10 new things that can be added. So it's totally fair that it's completely ever changing. But I know there's things that you wrote in there that no matter what year you're going to law school, they're going to apply to you in some way. So I think that's so important.
Yeah. Definitely.
That's good to hear. I mean, I think as a law professor too, I have a slightly different perspective on certain things now. And so I'd be very interested in, going back to edit the book and, even talking about some of the challenges I faced as a law professor, some things that have been easier than I thought, harder than I thought. I think that contrast might be kind of interesting.
I think so too.
That'd be
I'm
really
encouraged. I'm like,
Yeah,
please
I'm
do it.
curious
I'm like,
about that. I'm waiting for that to come out.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
wait. We'll patiently waiting for it.
So my next question is, I know in your book you talk about the tough experiences many students face in law school. So how do law students find their sense of purpose in law school when they have the overwhelming feeling of this sucks right now, I can't get through this? I know in my 1L year, I was struggling a lot and I was like, am I going to make it at some points? I was really down on myself. So what would you say for the sense of purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great question. I mean, I think the first thing to do that can be really helpful as a student, this may sound obvious, but I find that it's not, is to understand that the way that law school is structured is virtually guaranteed to induce a lot of stress.
Yeah, exactly.
If you feel a lot of stress, like
That's
you're
normal.
not that's normal. That's a reasonable response to the structure you're
Right.
put in, which includes like very often one final at the end, very often stressful cold calls that don't help your grade but may make you feel humiliated, may make you feel like you're stupid or aren't getting things as fast as other people. We put all the foundational classes in the first year. We may or may not explain how they relate to each other. We put you on a curve.
We just
so
talked
that
about
it
that
doesn't-
last episode. How like that in itself
Oh, really?
is
I
like,
haven't caught it yet.
oh gosh.
Oh my goodness, it's so problematic because it doesn't matter how you do. It matters how you do relative to your peers.
Yeah.
And creates this inherent sense of competition. I mean, so and as a professor, I hate grading on the curve, but I'm required to. And I get the reasons for it. I don't care for them, but I get them. I think we actually could change the system, but in any case, yeah. So I think that the first step in finding your sense of purpose in law school is to remember, like, oh, this is in some ways not a good structure. It's a structure that's been around a long time, and it's virtually guaranteed to induce stress. And so my feeling stressed out is pretty normal. I feel like the kind of next step that students are often able to take after they wrap their minds around that is to get that there's no right way to do law school. There's only your way to do law school. Like very often we go into law school and we have this idea that there's this prototypical great law student who gets great grades, gets the clerkship, gets the firm offer, gets the whatever the prize is, the RA-ship, the mock trial victory, the whatever. And that anything else kind of falls short. But that's so not true. There are so many ways to be happy in law school and to be a good lawyer. And if you can find a path through law school that feels intrinsically meaningful for you, not that looks good on paper or not that impresses your peers, but that truly satisfies something at the core of you, I think that's how students are able to start on the path that gets them where they need to be.
Yeah, I really love that advice. I think that's great advice. And for all the listeners, take that to heart.
Yeah.
Because I know when I was going through it my first year, I was like, oh, everyone needs to get on law review. Law review is the thing to do.
There are these
And-
made up standards that
Yeah.
are not written anywhere, but we all
Yeah, and law review is great. Like, if you can do it, you do it, and that is amazing. However, for me, I knew I wanted to go into entertainment law, and I was like, I really want to be in the Media, Entertainment, and Fashion Law Association, and I love networking, and I'm a social person, and I was like, I'm going to put those skills into this, and to make me happy, instead of struggling trying to get on law review, I was like, let me put my energy into MEFLA, and I became the president of MEFLA at my 3L year. So it is what you make of it, definitely.
and it's gonna change. You made the great point. It's gonna be different for everyone. So finding why you're there is, I think, that's the sweet spot.
Yeah, and it's the hard thing to do too, right? I mean, I think in some ways people's risk aversion really gets the best of them. They don't know what to do, and so they think, well, I better keep all of these options open. But as I see in the book, like as one of my mentors taught me in law school, or was fond of saying in law school, the point of life is not to die with as many options open as possible. So before you do something that you're not sure will be intrinsically fun or meaningful to you, think, what option is this keeping open that I actually want? Because if it's not, if you can't answer that question and you just think, well, it's a good thing to do, or, well, all the top students do it, that's probably not good enough justification. And you may want to think more about whether it's worth doing at all.
For sure. I think something leading on to that that you mentioned in the book that has honestly resonated with me since I read it was hating law school doesn't equal hating legal practice. And I think it was a hard thing to understand because for so long, as one else going into law school, all you know about law really is law school. So I'm halfway through, you're at your midterms, you're at your finals, and you're realizing, oh my God, I hate this. This is brutal. Why am I doing this to myself? I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to do any of this. Like, this seems like too much. So I guess what if you want to maybe like break down that mindset of hating law school isn't always meaning hating the legal practice, and then how can like our listeners remind themselves of this feeling when they're feeling kind of stuck in this law school experience?
Yeah, I think there's a tendency to, particularly with negative experiences, kind of universalize them. So, for example, students tend to think, oh, I get really nervous when I'm cold called, so I shouldn't consider a career in appellate advocacy. But in fact, those two things are completely different. I mean, cold calls aren't that much like appellate advocacy. They would be if in an appellate advocacy situation, there were like 50 lawyers out there. You didn't know who was going to get called on. You didn't know what questions were going to come up, But that's just sort of not how it is. It's not a realistic approximation. Taking tests is not a realistic approximation of legal practice. The things that we measure students by in law school, are a little tiny fraction of what it takes to be a good lawyer. So I think it's really hard for students to remember this because all they feel, I think, often that all they have is this grade on this piece of paper, or this one experience that they feel that they fell short on, or that they didn't enjoy. And I think it requires a lot of work to remember that just because you don't enjoy law school doesn't mean that you won't enjoy the law, that there's so many different kinds of legal practice. I mean, so many kinds where you can just look at pieces of paper all day, kinds where you can talk to people all day, kinds where you're not even practicing the law. People work for nonprofits, people work for government. There are just so many different capacities. And so, I think also law school exposes people to so many different kinds of law, not all of which are going to be inherently interesting. That's okay. The point is to find the path that interests you, to find your little spark of interest or enjoyment. But, you don't have to find every single thing interesting to want to be a lawyer. I mean, I am a law professor, and I had a couple classes that I absolutely couldn't stay awake in. I mean, really couldn't. And that made me think, gosh, if I can't understand this subject, or I don't even do my reading in this subject, how dare I think I want to be a law professor? But I feel like if I can be a law professor and find like that enjoyment in different aspects of the law and in my job, I feel like almost anyone can find what they're going to enjoy in the law. And it may not be what they thought that they were coming in for.
That's 100%, especially that part of the end. I feel like we've talked about this, like, and the amount of people I've spoken to postgraduate now that have said, I went in thinking I'm going completely one way, and look at me now, and they're in a completely different area. And I think it's important to know, one, you're not going to like everything, and two, when you realize you don't, adapt and change, and maybe there's something else that you do or you are more interested in. So.
Yeah. I know when I first started in law school, you have to take all your basic classes, criminal law,
torts,
contracts, all those classes. And I was like, I cannot wait to start taking the classes that I'm interested in. Entertainment law, fashion law, all those ones. I loved contracts, so I took more writing classes, which were really interesting. But yeah, you definitely you work your way up until where you want to be.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think that's one mistake that we kind of do make in the law school curriculum. I mean, my ideal law school curriculum would include the ability for students to take at least one elective, ideally two, their
In your
first
fir-
year.
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I feel like if you could be somehow connected to that thing, that interest, that spark that brought you into law school
Yeah.
in the first place. I mean, I remember sitting in on a constitutional litigation class, and it wasn't until then, my 3L year, that I realized, oh, this is all torts. I didn't learn that if you're suing the police, that's also torts. I was like, wait a minute. You mean torts can be interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Told me this.
Yeah.
I should have paid vastly more attention.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes, like, we could offer different instantiations of different classes too to help
100%.
students' interests. You know what I mean? We could teach constitutional litigation,
Yeah.
or torts for people who want to do constitutional litigation. We could teach
Yeah.
contracts for people who are really interested in entertainment. That
Yeah.
still teach all the general principles of contracts, but choose cases and principles that are really relevant within that particular area of law. So
sure.
That's something I really wish law schools did better.
Yeah.
I also wish that those main classes we took 2L and 3L, because those are the ones that are on the bar.
Yeah,
And I
that's
was taking
true.
all my electives, at the end of 2L and all of
Like,
3L.
forgets it.
And now I'm like, I wish I was taking torts, criminal
Yeah.
law, all those.
Well, I do want to say that I feel like that's the biggest difference between 1L and 2L is why you feel like there's like that huge jump. Like the best way to explain it is between 1L and 2L, it feels like I'm in a different kind of law school because I'm going into class, enjoying what I'm taking, loving, like looking forward to each class. Yes, they're going to have a few that like, oh, common law's been a pain. But for the most part, like I would say 80% of my classes I picked, so I like them and I'm looking forward to them versus 1L. You're just, for like lack of better words, holding on for dear life. Like you're just trying to hang in there as much as you can. So I definitely agree. I feel like it would make a world of a difference if you could throw in one elective even to your first year to give you that taste of like, this is what you get to do after these 3 years are over.
I agree. And in exchange, we could say you have to take, you could imagine like property or crim law, or you could imagine a couple possible classes to move to later in the curriculum where you say, well, you have to take property, but you can take it anytime you want. If you want to take it first year, cool. But if you want to sub in some elective, you can do that. I got one elective during my 1L year, and I happened to choose evidence, and I loved it. It kind of saved me. It was just so much fun.
Yeah.
And it was taught by a wonderful former prosecutor. And I mean, if I hadn't had that lifeline, I think I would have been a lot less invested. And actually, it would have helped less for my, it ended up being very useful for my summer internship as well. And I think that's also something that students should be able to choose classes that are relevant to,
For sure.
the internships and externships they're thinking about pursuing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, to change the topic a little bit, I want to talk about balance. I think that's huge in law school. I know that was a fear of mine going into law school. So I know your book, you emphasize the importance of balance. How can students cope with the pressure of an intense workload while still maintaining some balance in their personal lives?
I think that my perspective on balance has changed a little bit over the years. I mean, I think a few things. So one, I think that balance and what counts as balance can change over the course of a person's life. I think balance is not about, achieving some ideal, I see friends once a week, I work out 3 times a week, whatever, but rather figuring out what makes sense for you at this point in your life, what feels good. For most people, that is not working 80 hours a week. And so I think that one thing students can do in law school is to choose 1 or 2 things that make them feel like themselves, that make them feel like they're connecting to some core part of who they are. For some students, it's exercise, and that's like a non-moving piece. For some, it's relationships with family. For some, it's both plus more. But I think that figuring out whatever those things are for you that you want to be the non-moving pieces of your life, you need to put those first in your calendar and treat them, with as much respect as you treat a midterm or something like that. They need to get just as much deference, then then that forces law school into the parts that remain. Now that may be something that's really hard to do. I found it extraordinarily difficult, and and ended up experimenting with a bunch of different systems. But I think that it's an iterative process. It's something you work on, but I think that can be really useful. I mean, a student actually asked me, maybe last week, they said, no matter how much time I allocate to my reading, I feel like I never get it all done in every class. And I asked them how much time they were allocating, and they told me, and I forget what it was, but it was some totally reasonable amount of time. But they never finished in that time. They always, took a lot longer and ended up not working out or whatever. And what I said was like, okay, so if you're allocating, say, I don't know, on day X where you don't have class, you're allocating 5 hours or 6 hours to reading or something like that. Decide how much time you're going to spend on each class, and then when you're done, you're done. It's just never going to be all finished, and just sort of accepting that it's never going to be finished. A book that I actually just finished that I would highly recommend to law students is called 4,000 Weeks. And I think the author is Oliver Burkeman. He reads it himself and has a great voice and beautiful accent, so it's a pleasure to listen to. But one of the points he makes in the book is that part of finding whatever balance means to you is getting comfortable with the idea that you're never going to feel on top of everything, and that's going to be your permanent state, and that once you accept that, you can stop going through life thinking, well, once I finally finish my JD, then I'll be set. Well, once I finally finish this clerkship, well, once I get this offer, then I'll basically be set. Well, once I get my workout schedule set, and I visit my parents this holiday season or whatever, then things will get they'll calm down after that. No, they won't. They'll never calm down, and your to-do list will never look like a blank page.
Right.
And getting comfortable with that, and he says that getting comfortable with that can help you make good choices and accomplish just the things that you need to accomplish. We'll see. That's something I continue to work on.
Yeah. I'm like ordering that book right now on Amazon. I'm like, I need that. That's
that's great advice. I know when I was in college, I would get everything done right away. I got an assignment, it was done. Like I was always set and ahead. And when I started law school, and even 2L and 3L, I never felt ahead.
Oh no.
I was like, why can't I get ahead?
You're barely head of the water, I feel like most time.
So
that's normal.
I think that's great advice, is getting comfortable with just the craziness of what comes with this career.
It's true, and it's so hard, particularly for those of us. I was a lot like you in college, I think. I was the same. I prided myself in like every assignment's gonna be done at least 24 hours in advance. I'm not gonna stress. I'm not gonna be the person up until 2 a.m. on Sunday, like doing my reading or writing a paper. And I was completely that person in law school. And I think a lot of us hit that for the first time in law school, and we're like, oh my God, is this what other people have been dealing with all along? I thought I had it together. What's wrong with me? So I think that it's a lesson that some people perhaps learn a little earlier than I did, but but I do think it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it on our episode. We were talking about midterms, that sometimes you just gotta accept yourself. You only can do so much. There's only so many hours in a day. I mean, I think it's a very common like law school mentality of, but I could be doing more, and you could always be doing more. You could always be doing something, but at the same time, like you gotta live a life, and you need to set those internal boundaries. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and to see your work and your your reading and whatever, like it's all part of your life, right? And so if you I don't know. I mean, for a long time I tried to sort of separate work and life. I'm sort of experimenting now with something where I try to see my work more fully integrated as part of my life and see if I can find balance that way. I mean, I think realizing that finding balance is going to it's going to depend at what time you are in your life too. Like my students who have kids are finding balance in a very different way from my students who, maybe are just out of college and are single and, have more time to hang out socially and stuff.
For sure.
So I just think that realizing that it's about, in some ways, like life stage, it's about temperament, it's about, I mean, there have been times in my life, and I'm sure this is true of others as well, where I was more interested in plugging into my creative interests, and other times where I was more interested in plugging into, kind of a more like competitive or adversarial mentality, and times when I was more into, more of a compromise or negotiation focused mentality. And I just think embracing that, whatever's going on with you, and kind of following that sense of what's animating you right now, can make you not scattered, but rather actually give you direction.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. I love that perspective on it for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, this is I'm pulling another little quote from your book here, but I loved how you described like the parallels between law school and high school, because to be honest, I remember reading this before I went to law school, and I was like, okay, like sure, we'll see about that. And then you get there and you're like, oh my God, it's gossipy, it's cliquey, it's competitive, it's everything that high school was. Like, I had no idea. So I guess, one, my thoughts are kind of, how do you like recommend you don't kind of fall into that negative mindset when you're amongst this, maybe like everyone's competitive around you? I guess like more the law school dynamic. How do you stay grounded during those times?
Yeah, I mean, I think one way to I think the single most effective way to do it is to work on cultivating what Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls a growth mindset. Oh no, what Carol Dweck, calls a growth mindset, rather than a fixed mindset. Meaning that instead of thinking about whether you are good at something, thinking about whether you're getting better at something. So, am I better at something, than I was yesterday? Do I understand, 803, 803's hearsay exceptions a little bit better than I did yesterday? Not do I get them well enough to beat the curve on the final, but am I actually improving? And the reason that I conflate sometimes, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi writes about flow. The reason I sometimes conflate growth mindset with reaching a state of flow is that I think that the two are actually extremely closely tied, at least for me. So a flow state is sort of when you get into the zone and you're not really thinking about how much time is passing, and you get totally lost in whatever you're doing. So many people get this when they're, painting, or they're, running, or they're playing a team sport or whatever. But many law students can actually get it sometimes when they're studying law. And I find that, at least for my students, reportedly they are much, much, much more likely to find that kind of quiet enjoyment in what they're doing if they're focused on improvement rather than, grades or other comparative measures. It's just that law school isn't set up to reward, chasing flow or chasing a growth mindset, right? Your grades on your transcript are fixed mindset rewards, not growth mindset rewards. And that's a structural problem in law school, but it doesn't have to be a problem for you as an individual.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I know growing up, I played soccer. And when I would get on the field, and I was just saying this to my friend recently who I grew up playing with, I wish we were still playing soccer, because when I got on that field, I forgot about everything. I just was focused on the game. And now I try to take law school, or, now graduating like that, just studying habits. Like, your studying is, is your practice, and your exams or whatever you're doing at the end is like your game. And like you said, you can, get lost in that a little bit, and time can pass more. I think especially if you have a set schedule and you're doing what makes you happy, you can get lost in that. If you're not seeing it as this is so stressful, I have to do this. No, do this because this is what you want to do, and this is what's going to make you happy. And, and again, back to finding the balance while you're doing that. So go off of that. Another question is, how can students avoid falling into the trap of focusing on what others are doing and staying true to their own path in law school? I know I was like, wow, I mean, going back to the drama, like high school, I walked in, the first day of orientation, drama already. I'm like,
Yeah,
I didn't even experience this in
Yeah.
college, and I was in a sorority.
Yeah.
And
I think
I was-
actually, it's funny because it's about things that are like, you quote it in your book. I'm gonna quote it slightly off, but you had said like people care about things that they didn't even know about last week. Like it's like
Yeah.
now
everyone's
now
competing, everyone cares, everyone's drama. Who didn't give this
Yeah.
one the outline? Oh, I give you an outline, has the wrong things
they
on
don't
it.
know
I was
about
like,
big law, and then all of a sudden, like if you're not in the getting in the top 50 firms, they're not succeeding. But last week you didn't know what big law was. Like it's this like you get into this whirlwind of like, what did I just walk into? So
Yeah. So it's just how do you suggest students stay on their own path and not get into the craziness of, all the talk that's going on throughout the school?
I think there are a few ways. I mean, one way is to help, one way that can help, I think if you have kind of a stable grounding in who you are and what matters and what doesn't, that happens less. I think one of the reasons law school emerges to feel so much like high school is that people are in a situation where they're suddenly incredibly insecure and risk averse at the same time, and there's lots of smart, insecure, risk averse people all smashed together. So ways to kind of extract yourself being, in law school without being of law school. I mean, one thing is not to surround yourself with the people who are so tempting to spend time with, who totally know the latest gossip. They know who did what on the midterm. They know, what professor.
how do they
hired
know?
who
Like
and
how do
why.
these people know these things? It's crazy.
But stay away from those people, because for one, they probably don't really know, but for another, it saps your energy, even though it's so tempting, right?
Yeah.
Because you feel like, I just get a little information, I'll feel more secure maybe in relation or whatever, but you won't. You never will. So being able to stay, I think, connected to, so your friends within the law school being people who are pursuing similar goals to you, and I don't mean similar goals like similar professional goals, I mean similar goals about how to be in law school. Whether or not they have similar goals. So how to be, meaning whether to get involved in all the drama, whether to talk about grades, things like that. If you have friends who also aren't talking about their grades with you, you're less likely to kind of fall into that obsession. Another way is to stay connected to friends outside of law school, which can be really challenging, but to make time for those friends who will often remind you by asking things like, what's big law? Or you describe law review and they go, why would you do that? And all of a sudden you're like, oh, actually, I'm not sure. And you are kind of brought down to this, oh yeah, they know me for me.
Yeah.
And they can kind of remind you who you are. So staying attached to those friends or family members, I think, is really crucial. And also staying attached to the, hobbies and, whatever pastimes that make you feel like you. For me, I love reading fiction. Love fiction. And I stopped reading fiction altogether for a year, maybe more, in law school. I just felt like I didn't have time and I couldn't spend time on it. And then I decided at some point, maybe it was after 2L year, 3L year, I don't remember, but I started reading fiction again, and it was like the world turned to color for me when I didn't realize it had gone black and white. And it was like all of a sudden I was seeing the world the way that the real Katie Young sees the world. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. It was just so incredibly grounding. And I thought, oh yeah, it just broadened my perspective in a way that made me care about, there's just a way that these things that ground us have of helping us separate what matters from what doesn't and letting us connect to the core us. And maybe it's, like gardening, maybe it's learning a language, whatever it is for you. I feel like connecting to that is so important, especially now so there's something called revenge scrolling that you've probably heard of, where you spend your time. Is this like a term people use?
Yeah. I don't, brain raw, any of them. I'm like, yep, it's what I do.
Yeah. Right. It's so tempting.
Yeah.
To just spend your time and it's good to relax, but there's a difference between relaxation that rejuvenates you and relaxation that doesn't and is actually sort of corrosive.
Yeah.
And it's okay to indulge in corrosive relaxation, but realize that's what you're doing and not have that be your only source of relaxation.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. I know I struggled with when I used to love reading. Like, I still love reading, but I used to love reading growing up. I'd always have a book with me. And when I got to law school, I really, and this was, reading was my relaxation time.
This is a common problem.
And I got to law school and I was like, I just want to read like a book that's not a law book, just a book.
Anything else, yeah.
Just a book. But I felt that I was so overwhelmed with the law readings from my
class readings.
Readings. And
you're like, I'm not touching another book. I deal with books all day. I'm not touching
I was
it.
like, I have no time to read like a relaxation book. And it really upset me because I wanted to figure out a way that I could do my class readings, but also have a relaxation book and also have time to just rest my brain. Sometimes you just need to turn off and go to sleep, and start new the next day. So that was something I struggled with a lot.
Yeah. Holding on to those little things like you mentioned that, like, I was just telling Nicole, actually, I'm so bad at it, but my roommate's an artist, so I'm like, I want to be creative like her, so watercolor, but it's just something to literally, like I said, I just turn my brain off and I can, like, it's my version of like doing something that's outside of law school, so it's definitely important.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. And Nicole, I'm curious, have you like returned to pleasure reading post law school yet?
I honestly, I haven't yet. I haven't. I graduated in May and I was studying for the bar, and now I'm kind of just like, I got to get back into reading, because now my schedule is changing. I'm not in school all the time. I'm working. So now I have the time to get back into it. But even TV shows, I loved watching Netflix series. I never could watch them in law school because I was so busy and I didn't know how to find the time to get my class readings done and figure that out. So that's why I love that we talk about balance, because having those enjoyable things really help you get through. So no, I have not started my relaxation reading yet, but I definitely will be soon.
My gateway to relaxation reading is fiction podcasts. If your reading of choice is fiction, listening to fiction podcasts while taking, walking my dog or jogging or whatever was really fun for me because it was like little bits of a story. So like, I loved tennis and rabbits, and I don't know, like there are a bunch of really good fiction podcasts now.
Right.
Alice Isn't Dead, bunches of them. And that was like what I needed to, I don't know, just like, because it was little blips, right? It was like 10-minute blips. It was like the gateway fiction.
Yeah.
Another pleasure of like not having done a bunch of like Netflix watching while you're in law school, though, is like you can look back and you're like, oh my gosh, I have so much catching up to do.
Oh yeah.
There'll be some cool stuff at the
I
end
feel
of
like
it,
holiday break is the best because I haven't watched a single thing all year, so it's like no one talked to me. I have 2 weeks to watch everything I missed in the last 4 months, so it's amazing.
Yeah, no, definitely. All right.
So
we have one more
question to
for you,
close
and
us
then we
off.
can
We'll
wrap up.
keep it easy. So looking back on kind of everything that we talked about today, we like to do this with all of our guests. If you were to say a one sentence, kind of short, sweet, easy, your single most important thing that you would give to a law student, or maybe yourself when you were a law student, that you want to kind of take away from the whole conversation?
Oh, I thought you said this was going to be an easy I think that it would be that the point of law school is to use it to make yourself into the kind of person and the kind of lawyer that you yourself want to be. That's the project. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that. No,
Yeah,
that's
I like
that's
that.
100%. I feel like that's a great perspective as someone who's now like is looking back on it, because it's definitely, it's easy to get caught in it when you're in it. So it's great to hear that from your point of view there.
Yeah, definitely. And it makes me reflect.
Yeah.
Like my past 3 years now, I'm like, seeing myself grow, and I definitely have. So
Yeah.
you definitely see yourself grow and become to the person you want to be in law school, and it's what you make of it.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Sure. And there are things that you look back and you think, oh, like, I didn't do that, but actually, like, that would have been really useful to kind of try to look back at yourself from the perspective of yourself in 5 years. Like, that's hard to do, but that's an exercise that I was reading about in a book somewhat recently, and I thought it was very interesting when I tried it. It was like, write a letter to, if you're 40, write a letter to yourself from your 45-year-old self, for example. And I think that's a really cool idea. I think that's to put yourself in the mind of someone who's graduated from law school already and has been in a job for a year or two, what then would you want to have with you?
Yeah.
And I think that most people will find that they know themselves better than they think they do if they're willing to take the time to listen.
Yeah.
100%.
I agree. I mean, just being months out, I wish I could go back and tell myself, just relax.
Yeah.
And don't, I mean, you're going to be stressed out, but don't drive yourself crazy because you're there for a reason.
Yeah.
And you just need to find your way.
Yeah. No, 100%. Well, honestly, Katie, thank you so much for coming on our podcast today. This has been I always say this with guests, but truly, like, I feel like I'm more informed than anything. So even if no one gets anything out of this podcast, I feel like I just got so much knowledge from you. So thank you.
Good. Well, thank you. I really enjoyed our conversation.
I don't know. It was
Thank you.
amazing.
So
I know
amazing.
we didn't get enough time to touch on everything. So for all of our listeners, please definitely go check out the book. We're going to link everything down below. There's some really important things that Katie talks about in there, specifically the question of should you drop out. So when you're feeling that stress, the whole fact that your identity matters when you're in law school, and don't just get sucked into what kind of everyone else is doing and what they believe in. Mental well-being, something that we stress so much, and just kind of so much more. So I definitely can't recommend it more. Look, we'll link it down below. But in the meantime, is there anything else you have for us here, closing us out, Katie?
No, just thank you both so much. And I guess to your listeners, just remember that, like, it's all a process of becoming. Like, no one actually has it figured out, it turns out.
Yes. That was great. Thank you so
Amazing.
much. This was amazing advice.
Yes, thank you.
Take
You
the
have been
things,
amazing. I definitely will be bugging you again. I'm sure we do need a part 2. There's so much more. I'm like,
Yeah.
I have
And
more
if
notes.
there's another book coming out,
Yeah,
there will be a
maybe.
part 2, 100%.
I would love to come back anytime.
Perfect. Thank you
thank
so much.
you.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much to Kathryne or Katie. That was so amazing. I mean, it was a great interview, great answers, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed asking her questions.
Yeah, I really hope you listened and enjoyed this episode. I hope you took something away from it and it made your day a little bit better.
100%. So in the meantime, we will see you next week, but follow us on all our social medias. Make sure if you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, follow us. Don't forget our Instagram and our TikTok.
And in the meantime, stay stylish, stay sharp, and
Stay legal.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
guys.